Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to look at the last full story book in the Ranger's Apprentice series by John Flanigan. So there is one more book, which is a series of short stories, but this is the last full story in the book series. So, and I'm going to butcher the name of this. As previously said, if you have not seen the rest of my reviews of this book series, go back to the beginning and watch them through it. You don't want to watch these out of order. It will not make sense. You don't want to read these books really out of order, which may be one exception that has to do with moving book 7 after book 3. But again, otherwise you really need to read these books in order. Otherwise, not going to make sense. So watch the rest of the reviews before you start this. So let's look at this book. I'm going to butcher the title of this book like crazy. Check in the description for the actual spelling here. Partially because in this case, I don't speak Japanese. And so this is the Emperor of Nihon-Ja. And yes, massively butchering here. So this is an interesting story. It starts off with Will, Alyss, and Halt are basically being there in a different country, part of a kind of their country is standing as almost a middleman between two other countries that are trying to negotiate peace. So it's like Arlune is considered fair, so they're going to be kind of watching and being part of this. So Alyss is part of the diplomatic courts, that's why she's there. Halt and Will are there because they're rangers, and basically there's kind of part of the guard system that's being set up around her, as well as some of the other diplomats who are there. And they're watching essentially the military groups of these two countries and kind of how they're set up. One of them is very, very Roman, and they do those basic tactics of that you normally saw in the Roman legions. They were very, very simple. That's how they got them so large, and how they use their shields and the blocking kind of thing, and mainly just short stabbing. And it's very good on open plains. And then why the other countries use expert fighters. And this is important because they use this later. What's going on in this other country, where most of the story takes place, is Horace has been there kind of studying their battle tactics and their country. Now this is very much based off medieval Japan, with the samurai as this elite, basically the elite force, and specifically the higher caste of groups. Though in this country there's nothing higher than them, and the prince is part of this group. But the current reigning, I think whether he's the reigning emperor, he feels that the working classes need to be respected. So most of his people are extremely snobbish. These are the expert fighters. They are superior to everybody. Nobody else matters. They shouldn't have to respect anybody. And this emperor thinks like, but we couldn't survive without the farmers and the other workers in our country, and they deserve to have some sort of respect. So what ends up happening is one of the other leaders of the legal fiefs or clans rebels, and he gets another group to come with him, and they have basically their huge army, and they want the basically usurp the emperor, and they chase him. And Horace is there along with George, who's another friend. I think the last time I mentioned George was in the first book. He's a scholar and a lawyer of sorts, who grew up with Horace and Will, and he's with him to help him essentially teach Horace how to behave in this different country, essentially prevent him from taking a step wrong and insulting a foreign power. So that's why George is there. So he's with them, and they escape. I believe George gets injured, and essentially they get away, and they're heading for a specific mountains. And George says, like, I'll come with you. And Horace is like, no, you need to go home. You're gonna get hurt here. You're not meant for this. And what George ends up doing is like, you know what I'll do? If I can get to this specific port system, there's basically a message system. I can get Halt and Will to know what's going on and hit them to you, or at least get it to Arloon, their country. So that's what George does, and then George gets home. What ends up happening is Evelyn gets this message, or Cassandra, depending on who you want. She's in love with Horace. She comes, gets with the message, gets Alyss, Will, and Halt, and they go to this country, and eventually you have their journey trying to get to Horace, and Horace's journey with the Emperor, basically trying to get to this mountain town where they can be safe and try to figure out a strategy of what to do. So that's the first kind of part of the book. You have these two separate journeys getting through before eventually, along with some Scandians, of course they have them, that's how they get Halt and Will and Evelyn and Alyss get north and through rivers and getting north of this country. And then they get, basically the four of them get captured and trying to get to this city because this is where they know they're going. And eventually Horace, who has been trying to train some of these, they're working with, why is my brain blanking on who they're dealing with? The people to get them, help them, people who cut down trees. That's where my brain is going. Basically, yeah, they're the forestry people. They're the ones who cut down the trees and create the woods and things like that, and they're used to doing this. And that's who Horace is trying to teach to essentially be warriors to an extent. And then Will and Halt and the girls get there, and Will is trying to figure out, he's trying to help Horace. It's like, how can we turn these working people who aren't used to fighting at all, who are banned from fighting, to be able to defend us, because we have limited expert warriors. And then Will remembers what he just saw. The other countries and their warrior-like thing with their shields and how they protect themselves and how they fight. And with Horace, Evelyn, I don't think Alyss is very much involved. They start teaching these basically woodcutters how to do this, because it's very simple. They don't need expert fighting, and they slowly try to figure out what to do. Well, then Alyss and Evelyn, that's what she's going by, because she's not official right now. This is how she goes by throughout most of it. When she's being official, she's Princess Cassandra. When she's not being official, which is through most of these book series, she goes by Evelyn. So Evelyn and Alyss eventually realize there's this whole other group of people who are loyal to him, but we have to get a message to them, and they have a lord. So they travel across. Alyss has some knowledge of how people build canoes, and so they get these woodworkers to create them a canoe, and the two of them go across this lake, and they interact with this guy. It's like, there's a problem. They're loyal to him, but they're afraid of this monster in the woods that keeps killing people. So if you can get rid of that, they'll happily travel, which is what they do. Evelyn, who has become an expert with a sling, and Alyss, who acts as bait, essentially kill, I believe it's a snow leopard. It turns out to just be a gigantic snow leopard. And they kill this so these people can come help them. And in the course of this, Alyss has an issue. She's in her mind that Evelyn likes Will, that Evelyn is in love with Will, that they have this close relationship. And Evelyn has to get it through Alyss's head that, one, she's in love with Horace. She wants to marry Horace, that her and Will are like brothers. It's like they went through hell together in Scandia. She dragged him out of there and got him unaddicted to drugs. They dealt with the whole burning bridge thing. They've been through a lot together. But she's in love with Horace. And she thinks of Will as a close brother. Yes, they are close. But again, it's a brother-sister relationship. She's not in love with him. She thought she was briefly, but then she realized, no, Horace is a better person for me. She's in love with him. She's like, why do you think I pretty much left the castle to come rescue him, rather than just sending other people to do it? Why did I have to do it myself? So that's the other thing that goes on in this part of the book is Evelyn has to knock some sense into Alyss. It's like, no. Will is all yours. And not to mention, he's in love with her anyway. So But these two work together. This is probably the strongest female presence you have in this entire book series. I think the author has some other books that I'll probably review at some point. I haven't read them. That does focus more on female warriors. But in this case, these two women kill a giant snow leopard and basically bring in reinforcements. So that's kind of what happens. And you have all the battle tactics of what Horace and Will and Halt are doing, trying to battle this expert military force. And they get the backup. And what does end up happening is, it's, as usual, the warlord has lied to the groups that he convinced them that he thought that the emperor was going insane and that he wanted to dismantle the upper class. And like, no, that's not what I'm trying to do. I just want respect for the working classes, not necessarily we want them to take over. And it kind of collapses this guy's warriors, and then he ends up, I believe, being killed by Will with his arrows, because that's what Will does. He's a ranger. They're very, very good. Trying to think if Gillian's on board with us. No, Gillian he's not there. But that's kind of the end of this story. And then these guys, the Emperor thanks Horace. Horace had been there for several months, so he's become pretty close with this Emperor. And the Emperor says, if you get married, I will possibly come to your wedding. But right now I need to stabilize my country. And yes, I do believe Horace and Cassandra get engaged at the end of this book. So basically they're on the ship on their way home, and Horace proposes, and Will kind of proposes. Like, maybe we should do that. She's like, you better have a better proposal than that. So that's kind of the ending. I'm trying to think. Yes, that is the ending. Mixing up this book with the short stories, which is what I'll cover next. So this is the last major full-on book in this series. It's a fantastic series. If your kid likes battle tactics, they'll go for it like crazy. There are some strong female characters. There's no real damsel in distress. I would never call Evelyn a damsel in distress. She pretends to be in book 2, and that was pretty much it. Otherwise, she argues with her father. She's like, no, I need to learn to protect myself. And she's very, very intelligent. And she is the only heir to the throne. I don't know what's going on with her mother. It's never, as far as I can remember, it's not mentioned. I could be wrong. But this is a great series in a whole. I will finish off with the last book, which is a series of short stories, which is The Lost Stories. Very interesting book. I just finished it last night as of the filming of this, and it's July. So just so you know when these things are being filmed in July. So check out the rest of this. Highly recommend this series. The author is fantastic. And again, kids who are middle school and up, really interested in battle tactics here, medieval battle tactics. Why it's fictional, that's really the basis of these stories and this journey of this young apprentice as he grows up and moves through the world and works with his mentor. So that is why I'd highly recommend this series. If you like this series of reviews, check out the rest of my channel. I do a bunch of other book reviews. I cover a little bit of Tamora Pierce. I'll probably cover more. She's one of my favorite fiction fantasy authors. A bunch of other children's books, some educational resources, some travel stuff, some sprinkling of secular, aka non-religious homeschooling stuff, and a whole bunch more to come. So like and subscribe to see more of this. Thank you.